Hey, I got a real fun comment last week from a guy who asked me if I knew that my Camp Crystal Lake sign was crooked and asked me if I could straighten it out because it was kind of bothering him a little bit. So let's see if I can fix that. Oh, I see. It's got two hooks on it. All right, there we go. Problem solved. I'm gonna try that. Does the color look a little bit better here? One of the things I've always struggled with in my videos is getting the color balance to look right. I don't really care about it that much, but oftentimes, especially with so much wood in a shop, the lighting comes out really yellow, and I have to correct for that because it looks kind of weird. But usually I end up overcorrecting, and then it looks really blue. So I think what I've done here is, see, I've got this auto white balance setting on my camera because I ain't gonna get into anything else more complicated than that. So I'll just use auto, but they have to overcomplicate that too because there's two settings for auto white balance. There's ambiance priority and is it ambiance or ambience? I think it's ambiance. I like to say ambiance. I sound more worldly that way. So either set it for ambiance priority or white priority. Now, don't you think that white balance should be white prioritized? Like it wants to give you a good color of white rather than, so I'm not sure what the ambiance priority setting is, but I noticed that it was set to the ambiance setting. So I just changed it. So now I think I look more natural, at least judging from it is the way it is right here. Click, click, click. Those are all people clicking away from this video. I should probably listen to those YouTube channel experts a little bit more. You know how they always say you start your first 5 seconds, you have to capture the viewer in those first 5 seconds of the video. And you know what people do now is that for a little bit what they've been doing this is they'll show a little clip, like the most exciting part of the video, and they'll show that in the first 5 seconds, you know, and it's kind of one of those, I'm falling or something like that, and then it cuts. You're probably wondering how I got myself into this situation, and then record scratch, and then it goes back, and then it starts the actual video. So if you're a savvy YouTube viewer, what you've learned to do is just always click past that first 5 seconds. Of course, if you'd clicked past the first 5 seconds of this video, you would have missed the whole Camp Crystal Lake business, you know, and that's comedy gold right there. Click, click, click. All right, let's get down to business. First of all, I had a number of questions about my panel glue up video, a bottle episode yesterday about gluing up those panels, and I wanted to address those because they were really good questions. The most common question I got asked and the biggest source of confusion was, how am I getting a straight edge on this side if this side isn't completely straight? It's got to run against that edge. And I know in the past I've made a jig. I have a table saw jointing jig where you can clamp the wood down and then that straight edge runs along the fence. But that's mostly for, I think, longer boards. The more and more I've been using this method that I showed yesterday, the more sense I think it makes. Here's an example of a board that is untreated on one side. I haven't jointed this side, and there's gaps on there. It doesn't fit perfectly. So I know this side isn't jointed, and it doesn't matter because what's gonna happen is you can see that this is the side I have jointed and it fits on there perfectly against that. So I think what's happening here is that as long as this area where the blade is flat, the board should keep running through that section flat. Let me kind of show you what I mean. Say if this board had a warp in it. I've cut this board just as an exaggeration. I think if you had a board that warped that much, you probably wouldn't want to use it at all. But if I were to put this in here like this and run this through, I could still maintain this same direction the entire way past the blade. The problem would be is if I think the board was so long that when you got to the other side, it started to curve out. But even then, I think it would still work pretty well. So that's the method I use. Now, assuming that if you had the board that was curved this way, you know, let's assume this board was warped like that. You wouldn't want to do this side because then that would just kind of rock against there. But as long as you have, you know, a couple points of contact, I think you should be all right, and it should give you that nice straight edge. And then once I have that jointed edge, then I can flip it over and cut out this side to make it parallel with that side. And to be honest, I don't really know if that's a good enough explanation. I guess the way I try to think of it is that the fence is going to remain constantly straight. So as long as the board is running along there, at the point where the blade is, you're fine. Once you get past the blade, it shouldn't make that much of a difference. You would rarely encounter a board that was, you know, warped that much. It's usually just a little bit of an edge that's not quite straight, and so just cleaning it up like that using the fence always works out really good for me. I think as long as you're maintaining constant pressure of your workpiece against the fence, you should be okay. The bottom line is you don't have to start with one completely straight edge. As long as it's, you know, straight enough, you can run it along your rip fence, and that will square up the other edge. Which brings me into another question, which was, why didn't I joint both edges of the boards before I glued them up? And I would do that if I was using multiple boards, say 3 boards, because that would give me more options for arranging those, and I would need both sides jointed. In the case of these, I only needed that one edge so that they would fit together nicely. These are going to be cut down to their final width, so I'm going to remove both edges anyway. Which brings me to another question that I got, is why I wasn't using any kind of blocks to protect these edges as I was gluing it together. It's also a really good question if I was going to glue together panels where I wasn't going to treat those edges or cut them off, then you would probably want to use some blocks to protect the wood so it wouldn't leave any kind of dents. But again, these are all going to be cut down a little bit. Oh, about the Shoeshine box design itself, a few people, including Richard Dixon, pointed out that that top tray will need to be modified, otherwise the lid won't close properly. And thank you for pointing that out, because I'd totally forgotten about that, and I would probably run across that problem during the build. So there's a couple of ways I could correct that. I could just make the inner tray a little bit smaller. I might just do that, but then you kind of have to position it correctly, I think, before shutting the lid. I think what I could do is just kind of angle the front of that tray a little bit. So I'll experiment with that a little bit in SketchUp and just see how that lid hinges. But as always, thank you guys for your comments. They're always so insightful and valuable to me. As I'm building stuff, you're always pointing out potential pitfalls that I might encounter or things that I've forgotten about. They really help me out enormously. And of course, thank you for asking questions. There is no question considered too dumb for this channel. And like I've mentioned before, it's really easy for me to get caught up in a procedure I'm doing and forget that there's like basic information that people need to know. So don't hesitate to ask those questions. Hey, thank you all who participated in the Woodworking Summer Jam. That was really cool. It was amazing to see how many projects you guys were able to make in just 3 days. So I wanted to take a moment to show you some of those today, and I'll be showing you more and more for the next couple weeks probably. I didn't want to overwhelm you with them all in one day. First of all, I wanted to show you this table from Brian Cook. He said he didn't have time to stain and finish it, but at least he got it all together and sanded, and oh my gosh, this thing looks crazy good. It has breadboard ends on it, it looks like. A couple of chairs and tables by Average American. This is pretty incredible to be able to do this. He says he got it done just in time for the Central California heat wave. It's kind of always a heat wave in Central California, at least when I drive through there. He said he made these out of a couple of barrels that he's had for months, and he's been planning to build these. I just love this outdoor bar from Jason Bailey. This would look great on any deck or patio. He thinks it might have been a little bit ambitious for a weekend project. He didn't quite get it wrapped up in time, but it's made from 2x4s and reclaimed pallet slats. He says in the interest of full transparency, he did have the pallet pieces stained before the weekend, but the building did take place over the 2 days. That's pretty cool. I just love that multicolored look on those pieces. And finally, Jacob is a 14-year-old woodworker, and he made this Adirondack chair over the weekend based on my plans. I think all Adirondack chairs ought to be brightly colored like this. Thumbs up for the purple. Okay, we'll have more of these in the coming days, so keep tuning in. Hey, before I go, remember last month when I mentioned the Woodworking for Mere Mortals newsletter, and I said, well, I'll have a sign-up page set up before the next month. Well, we've got that set up, so if you want to sign up for my monthly newsletter, just head over to notesfromsteve.com. The newsletter is actually called Notes from the Shop, but that domain was already taken. So we're using notesfromsteve.com. And it's just a fun newsletter that we're sending out on the first Friday of every month. So the next issue, the August issue, issue number 2, comes out tomorrow. I'll include a link down in the description too if you just like to click things rather than type things. Who doesn't like to click things? Click, click, click. Next video, I want to finish up those panels. I've got some more catification to do and some other stuff. I'll see you guys then.